Good evening, everyone. This is Desiree Young with VentureWalk, and you are tuning in to the Model versus Marketing webinar. Specifically, it's called How to Build a Money-Making, Mission-Driven Business. I did a little bit of overview just a few minutes ago, but for those who are still joining us, I want to encourage you to use the social media channels. We're certainly on my side of the road, looking to use a lot more social media this year. We've been doing it for clients forever, but as you know, the shoemaker often has very poorly made shoes. So we'll be utilizing that certainly in some of the free webinars and other events that we have going on. And so tonight, you can use certainly Twitter, Facebook, whatever you're comfortable with. But if you're on Twitter, my specific handle is @Desiree Young. And we'll be using hashtag #PoundVentureWalk, #PoundVentureWalk. And basically those are what that pound, whatever word is, just a quick tutorial. You can utilize that to be able to anchor whatever type of post or tweet that you're putting out. And it allows you to do searches, and it'll allow me, of course, to go back and really hear what things you're saying. Likewise, if you're on Facebook, you can go to our Facebook page, like it if you haven't already. But it's facebook.com/VentureWalk. And I actually am going to use the last few minutes, whatever time I end, I'm going to really take the next few minutes and hop on the Facebook page, and I'll be there taking questions. So just a little bit of social media savvy, but model versus marketing, this is a big deal. It really is, and it's one of the areas that I've been really wanting to dig stronger into for quite some time. And I really have been feeling and sensing that the time is ripe based off of the conversations I'm having in public speaking venues, in one-on-one sessions, and really just talking to people in general. I live in a town here in New Orleans, Louisiana, where small business is big business. And so there's not really a day that can go by where I don't get the opportunity to communicate with a business owner, whether they're a client or not. And I just get an opportunity to really glean and to learn just what's on your minds. If you're new to any of the trainings that I've done, or maybe are outside of the New Orleans area, I want to kind of introduce you and let you know who I am. I mentioned earlier my name is Desiree Young, and the name of my company is called VentureWalk. My story is a bit different. Yes, this is a picture of me next to an incredibly large valve. I actually started out as an engineer several years ago, and it's really the engineering track that strangely brought me to where I am. I mean, we can all say that our past has certainly gotten us to our present. But for me, at the time, my primary responsibility was making certain that the packaging unit in which I worked had product getting out of the door every day. And if there was a mechanical issue that stopped that from happening, then I was immediately engaged. And it didn't matter whether it was 2 p.m. or 2 a.m., I would get an interesting call. And it was a very strange project that I got put on. It was led by marketing out of headquarters, and they had wanted to package a very strangely shaped 2.5-gallon jug. And it was my responsibility to design a packaging line that would fill this container. And let me tell you, this was no easy task. At the moment I learned about this project, I realized right away that I was on the wrong side of that equation, and that if I ever got out of engineering, I would certainly want to play on the side of business and potentially marketing, because apparently the marketing people seem to get what they want. Well, fast forward several years later, and I'm very, very excited to be a part of the entrepreneurial community and the ecosystem, as it's so often called. I do have an MBA in marketing and entrepreneurial strategy. That was really what leaped and allowed me to get into entrepreneurship. And my real dedication is to marketing strategy and small business development. Most of my work is centered along the Gulf Coast in Louisiana in the United States, but certainly have been having some really cool opportunities, especially this year, 2014, to get even outside of my neighborhood. But I do absolutely love my neighborhood. And if you're ever fortunate to be able to join or to visit New Orleans, I want to encourage you to do that. My work over the last really 10 years now, and it actually just made 10 years this year, I'll talk more about that a bit later, has been a really interesting ride. I've had the opportunity to work with some really amazing programs that target working with small businesses, things and programs such as the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses Program, Capital One's Getting Down to Business program, as well as a host of other locally based programs. What's more is that I've had the opportunity to develop my own products and programs as well. You learn something after doing this kind of work for, at this point, 10 years. And so I've developed a program that's called Pitch to Win. It's actually a product that's available online at my site, venturewalk.com, which you can certainly check out. And it's all about helping you to really get contests, capital, contracts, customers. Pitching is so much bigger than just the verbal presentation, and it's something I've certainly put a great deal of my work into, but it's all about communicating your business. And so these are some of the great, cool things I've had an opportunity to do, and training, talking to you tonight, is, honest to goodness, one of my very favorites. And so let's just delve in, because we are talking about the whole concept of model versus marketing, but I don't want to leave anything to question. So I really want to just start by saying, well, what is it that I actually mean even by marketing? Because marketing in and of itself can have a lot of different understandings and definitions. This, what you're seeing, is actually the system that I personally use, one that I developed to help people, especially business owners, understand the phases of marketing. So it goes from getting visibility, which is what most people associate with marketing, but then it transitions into conversion or getting sales. And then, hopefully, it transitions to loyalty, getting those same customers and clients to buy a second, third, fourth time, or to refer. This is important. Obviously, marketing is important, and I will not this evening talk you out of that belief. However, there's another really important point that is often not given attention to. I mentioned to you that I was an engineer in my former life, and obviously this, as is shown by this particular image, this is a set of gears. I do still carry the engineering and logic mindset into my work. As you'll see, though, the gears can move only if they are powered to move. And if you'll note, the red arrows actually represent the physical movement, the energy that's going into those gears to make them move. And what I'm representing as these red arrows are what I'm calling the model. If the model does not exist, then the marketing cannot work. And for so many of you, I've seen you struggle, and I've got to be honest with you, I've actually personally had this challenge as well. So I'm not presenting anything I learned secondhand. It's been firsthand. But you have been giving a lot of energy, a lot of time, and possibly a lot of money to the area of marketing. And I'm not going to disagree and say that that's not what you should be doing. However, unfortunately, I've seen too many business owners not give attention to what I'm calling the model. And that really does energize any of the marketing. And dare I say, it energizes and brings your very business to life. It brings your business to life. So what in the world am I really talking about here when I say the model? Well, it's very simple. Your business model is not like a convoluted, strange image of something. I'm an engineer, and I love, love, love all of this cool imagery, but that's not what I'm talking about. Your business model is simply an understanding of how your business makes money. Everything that it takes to literally bring money in the door. And marketing may indeed be one part of that, but I want to submit to you that it's not the only part. There are actually 6 P's of business modeling, 6 P's. My time this evening will only allow me to get into 3, but I also recognize that these 3 are incredibly important. Really, all of them are important. But I want to make sure you're aware of these 3, and really more so not just aware of them, because as always, I don't want to just use this webinar tonight to give you information, but more so to spark you and to get you into some action and really thinking about what your specific business model is or isn't. So the 3 P's of business modeling that I'll discuss tonight specifically are package or packaging. I'll be talking about positioning, and I'll be talking about pricing. These are 3. As far as knowing the whole 6, I'll talk later about how you can learn about those other 3. But stick with me, because these 3 are still going to be really, really critical. Now, if I have any MBAs, those with master's degrees in business or beyond, I just want to address this right up front. I, too, have an MBA. I'm very grateful to have had an MBA, but I also recognize that working within the small business community, there's also been a lot of learning and unlearning at times. In business school, one is taught that there are 4 P's of marketing, and I am not disagreeing with that. The 4 P's are what you see in front of you: price, product, place, and promotion. However, again, with my decade of working in the small business community, it's really the model versus marketing. And I actually make a very clear separation relative to what those two things are. Marketing, certainly, it encompasses the 4 Ps, but there are other Ps that come under modeling. And so just wanted to put that out there because I don't want to get any emails from those that have been in business, gone through business school, incredibly educated. I don't want to get any hate mail about, what are you talking about? Those are the 4 Ps. I gotcha. I'm with you, but I want you to stick with me. So this is the big competition, ladies and gentlemen. It's the big competition. And so we're going to jump right in first off to talk about packaging. Now, marketing says that you should offer several individual options, and we've all been in this place, haven't we? You want to make sure you are giving the people what they want, and I'm sure if you have customers or clients, like any small business does, they are certain to tell you what they want at all points of the day. But model says that you should offer the best few options. You should offer the best few options. Let me explain. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of something called the JAM experience or experiment. It was actually an experiment that was performed by a professor by the name of Sheena Iyengar. She's a professor at Columbia University. It was done over a decade ago. If you have the opportunity, I want to encourage you to Google her name. That's Iyengar, Iyengar, but specifically she's on TED Talks, even if you just put in Sheena. Really, really awesome presenter. And what is so interesting, and I'm going to test you guys on this later, is that she has a really unique physical trait that I did not catch, but it adds to the amazing ability for her to really do the work she does. At any rate, she did an experiment. She had some research where there was a grocery store, a very specialty, high-end grocery store that had a series of jams. And in one of those displays, they had a display with 24 flavors of jam, 24. And here's what they discovered. When there was a display of 24 flavors, 60% of the customers actually stopped to look, but only 3% purchased, okay? So 24 flavors, 60% stopped to look, but only 3% purchased. When they reduced the options and then had the jam display with only 6 flavors, at this point, 40% of the customers that came into that specific grocer stopped and looked. However, 30% of them actually purchased, 30%. So what in the world does this say? It says that the smaller display or the less options actually allowed them to sell 6 times more product. Now, I don't know exactly how much you're selling, whether it's product or whether it's services, because believe it or not, this will apply to both a service or a retail-based business. But the ability to increase your sales by this much is paramount. It's paramount. What this tells us, ladies and gentlemen, is that when it comes to this concept of packaging, less is absolutely more. The truth is, there is such a thing as choice overload. And when we're overwhelmed by too many choices, our decision is often to do nothing. Yes, doing nothing is a choice. And believe it or not, you are competing with that choice. So in the case of this jam experiment, 97% of the people who came into the store and actually viewed that 24 flavor display chose to do nothing, as in not purchase. So what can we learn from this? The truth is, not only can we increase sales by not overwhelming our customers, but we can also literally reduce our inventory costs if inventory is actually a part of your business, and literally drive up profitability. So this is a case where looking at our packaging, which is a part of our model, is really more advantageous than just basic marketing alone. I want to give you another packaging example because this is really, really powerful. There are many, many strategies in packaging, and I'm going to talk, as I mentioned, a little later about how you can learn about the other strategies because they may not all apply to you. But just understanding a little bit about how this works and how it can really make a big impact in your business for, honest to goodness, most often less work and less investment. So I call this example kind of, do you want fries with that? We all know, and I am ashamed to say, yes, I have made a visit or 2 or 10 to the McDonald's. Not as often as I used to, but I've done it, and I'm sure you have too. So obviously we can purchase any of those items separately, right? However, McDonald's, and they're a master at this, has really figured out how it is that they can package. This is a bit different from the first example, but they can package many items into one item. They give it an amazing name. They give it, in this case, a real brand. And it's really where we understand that by combining specific items, we can add value and literally sell more. We can combine, add value, and actually sell more. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking to yourself, wait a minute, you just said to get rid of all of the options. What are you saying? Well, in this case, we're consolidating options based off of the value that our consumers really want from us. And the big deal here is that it's not just about piling everything together. I actually want to caution you around that, because this is not the time to, as my coach would say, over-accessorize. It's about decluttering our offers and really making certain that we are simply pulling together the things that are valuable, but it allows us to sell more and at a potential price where some items would never get purchased, because they're looking at the whole versus the individual items. And once again, whether you're in a retail type of business or in a service-based business, this concept and this type of packaging is incredibly powerful. The big deal in understanding packaging is that if not, ladies and gentlemen, you'll find yourself overselling, putting too much as far as the features of what you're offering and trying to pump more and more to get someone interested. We really wind up not just overselling, but possibly losing the sale. So packaging and utilizing this main part of modeling allows you to literally be able to do less but gain more from it. So this is just one of the P's of modeling. So I want to switch to the next one. Relative to positioning, and we've all heard this before. I'm sure you've heard you've got to position yourself, and the question is, what in the world does that really mean? Marketing will say that you should position yourself in a way that captures more customers, right? It's all about visibility and making sure you're out there and making sure enough people see and know you exist, and that is true. But if I contrast that to model, which says that you want to position in a way that captures better customers, my question to you is, which do you want? Do you want more customers or do you want better customers? And this is assuming you've got to choose one side or the other. Well, again, model is what's going to win here. Let me show you kind of a case study, and this is a martial arts dojo that I'd worked with. In essence, he was really committed to serving and catering to the underserved, high-risk youth in his martial arts dojo. Most often, he was catering to young boys and sincerely had a really powerful brand and position in the community as being someone that literally, based off of his business, he was actually helping to fight crime by allowing young boys to, number one, have a place to be after school, but secondly, the discipline that they would learn in the skill of martial arts would allow them to not just not put their aggression out in a negative way, but it would also allow them to have discipline and to literally do much better in school. Normally, of course, he was selling pretty much one-to-one, getting parents into the school, going through a sales presentation, making certain that they kind of got in on a trial, and hopefully they stayed around. The problem was that because of who he served, there was really low loyalty. And, well, truth be told, the very people he wanted to serve most were incredibly price sensitive. And what occurred is that a lot of his business was just fluctuating. It was very difficult for him to plan. It was very difficult for him to really know what would go on next and really to have any type of real customer life cycle. The big deal is that you want to keep your customer as long as you can, and that's called their life cycle. You want to extend that for as long as you can. A lot of his repositioning was not so much to sell to parents, but to cater to schools and literally perform in-house programs. By now positioning himself not so much as just the martial arts dojo, but he positioned himself now as a potential program to bring into schools. He's now able to sell not just one-to-one, one parent to one parent, but one to dozens while he's physically in the schools. So one school could very easily for him equal close to not just 12, but dozens of students at one time. And because he was now utilizing a very different funding source, that being both local and state-based funding that in some cases were mandated, he now was able to get outside of that price sensitivity. So simply by repositioning himself, he was able to now make certain that he still served this particular group in this particular segment, but he no longer had the challenges that came with that segment. So what am I saying? Positioning, ladies and gentlemen, is about differentiating yourself, and I know you've heard this before, but perhaps you've not heard this side of the story. It is about differentiating yourself from not just your competitors, but anyone or anything that someone may be considering to solve the problem that they are considering you for. I'm going to say that again. The big deal about positioning is bigger than just being different and unique from your competitors. You've got to consider your competitors as anything or anyone that a prospect may be considering to solve the problem that they're really needing solved. For many of us, we kind of go through this check of who else is doing what we're doing, and we think to ourselves, I'm safe because I'm doing this and someone else isn't. Well, the truth is the big deal is around what else or who else is your prospect considering. And are you communicating that? And that is really what positioning is all about. We can easily fall into what I call Me Too branding by simply kind of saying, well, we do what everyone else does, so why won't they choose us? The truth is you've got to tell people what you're doing that no one else does so that they can choose you. You hear the difference? It's the difference between saying what you do and why you should be chosen like everyone else and what you're doing that no one else is doing. That is the big difference. So I want to pause now because I've spoken about two types of models and the pieces of modeling. I've talked about packaging and I've talked about positioning. So I'm curious if any of you are thinking through and listening to some of this information. I'm hoping you've gleaned up to this point even some thoughts, and I've still got another point to carry. But have you even maybe heard some glimpse of how perhaps you may want to now relook at how your business is really set up and, more importantly, how you're selling products or services? If you have some thoughts, if there are any aha moments that are coming across, I want you to go ahead and shoot it to me in the chat. I'm really anxious to see. I'm going to move on to my next point and take a little bit of a break while you're pulling together your thoughts around packaging, positioning, and how those two pieces can certainly make a difference for you and, more importantly, make a difference in your business in really getting more sales in and getting those sales in a way that's much easier. Now, for anyone who's kept up with me, even for a little while, you know, as I mentioned earlier, that this year, actually February 14th, marked VentureWalk's 10th year in business. And I got to be honest with you, I will tell no lie. I am as surprised and amazed and honestly happy as anyone. I'm not sure I anticipated being in business this long, but I'm certainly incredibly grateful and feel really, really blessed to still call myself being a business owner after this amount of time, recognizing that the majority of businesses, close to 70%, stop, close, sell, which isn't a bad thing necessarily, but usually by the time 7 years have come around, being in business now at 10 years is quite a feat. And for that reason, I really wanted to do something special this year, and I got some of my creative minds team. I have a mastermind of creative folks that I love to tap into for special occasions such as this. And we've got going on what I'm calling my 10 plus 10 by 10, and it's for all of 2014. Here's what it means. I want to help as many entrepreneurs as I can to increase their sales by at least 10% over the next 10 months. That's from March through December, of course, for our 10 years in business. So as many entrepreneurs as we can to increase their sales by 10% at least over the next 10 months from March to December for our 10th year anniversary. And I'm trusting if you're on this call and you're watching the webinar, or even if it's not live but you're catching the recording, I want you to be one of the many that can fall into this 10 plus 10 by 10. There will be several events and giveaways every single month going on from March all the way through December. Some will indeed be free. Many will. And my objective is really to expose you to resources, to expose you to information, and sometimes done with you opportunities to give yourself that edge. For many of us, increasing sales is really not always about doing big things differently. It's usually about the small little tweaks. And so many times we get overwhelmed in thinking it's the big pieces that we've got to be doing when, truth be told, that's not it. I want to give attention to those smaller tweaks and those smaller opportunities that can really give us really high and big returns. So I want you to stay tuned because there's a whole lot that I've got going on this year, and I certainly wanted to make that official announcement. One of the things that's going on this next month, actually, the first official kickoff of the 10 plus 10 by 10 is my Business GPS Action Circle. To tell you a little bit about it, it has been a project, really a heart project for several years. I've had perhaps about 70 people to go through piloted parts of this, and this is the first time I'm pulling all of those pieces together. The biggest deliverable and my greatest objective in my Business GPS Action Circle is to help entrepreneurs identify their greatest next level opportunity. For some, it's a new product. For some, it's a new service. For some, it's a different audience. It's all about playing with these pieces of the model that I talked about and really developing all 6 of those Ps, including the packaging and the pricing and the positioning, what I'm speaking to you about tonight. The other key point that I'm going to work with business owners with is helping them to launch the promotion for that next level opportunity and literally measure results. Now, I know what you're probably thinking if you are a person that's followed me for any amount of time, or if you've taken advantage of local-based training and seminars, you're probably thinking, all right, so how is this concept of this action circle different from what exists out there? Specifically, it is a 5-month-long program that will kick off in March and close out in July. But what's different is that we are really taking a very narrow path of talking about just the model and just the marketing, because I recognize that these are 2 primary pieces that most business owners fail to really grasp and implement to see the results that they can bring. And what's also interesting is that marketing is absolutely the other side of the coin when it comes to marketing and sales. All marketing should lead to sales, but most of us don't know what to do to actually get more in our business. Or if we know what to do, we don't exactly understand how to get the time and the resources and the know-how to get it done. And as I mentioned, some of us have to recognize, well, where's the problem, a marketing problem versus a model problem? And this program that I'll be offering starting in March next month is where we're going to address both sides. It'll be a combination of in-person and virtual implementation days. So this will not just be about training and seminars, but it will be actual doing it with you, literally going through, walking through the pieces of the system that I use and have done for several years now with private clients so that we really can start to see real results. It's going to be a very intimate group because I want to keep it small, and I really am going to be dedicating a great deal of my time with this particular group as well. My time will be spent, of course, guiding you, coaching you, and really giving you real-world direction. So this isn't about your floundering and having to just figure it out. I will be there. We'll be having assignments that will stay in action, and, of course, there's ongoing Q&A as well. My big deal is recognizing that for us as business owners, we really want to make sure we're using our time wisely, which is why I'll also be injecting templates and guides and checklists that will cut any launch time at the very least in half. These are pieces that I've personally developed, some that I've inherited, but in all, it's everything from step-by-step tutorials on setting up ads, a marketing Rolodex of different resources and where to use what and how, even to the level of forecasting, which I know many of us do not do. In other words, knowing when our marketing is working and when it isn't. I'm really excited about this program, ladies and gentlemen. As I mentioned, it has certainly been a birthing for quite some time. And if you are interested and if you believe that you're at the point of being ready to take advantage of something like this, I really want to invite you to let me know and to be involved. Specifically, I am going to be using an interest form to begin with because I do recognize that this type of program is not for everyone. It's quite all right if it isn't, but I want to make sure that everyone is clear. I do want to make sure you're the right fit and that you're really at the right point of your business. And I'm not saying that you even have to be at a certain income level. I'm not saying you have to have been in business for very long. There are certain pieces that I'll want to know about. There's an interest form that's available on my website, venturewalk.com/action circle, and it is where you can certainly simply put in your information. It's very basic, and within 48 hours, I or someone on my team is going to get, at the very least, the information about the program. Don't worry. Simply saying you're interested does not obligate you in any way to do anything or pay anything. It's simply to get all of the details on what the program is. As you can see, it's still my baby that I'm nurturing, and I do want to make sure to not put everything out until I really know that it's someone who is interested. So all you have to do is complete the form, and we'll get back to you and give you that information on what the program really, really includes. Just to let you know, we've got a couple of bonuses, one in which is the first 4 that actually sign up will get a free jumpstart session. That's a one-on-one session with me. I've had some private clients already take advantage of this, and so this number is not as up-to-date as it was. It's much less than 4 now. I believe there is 1 spot left. I'm not 100% certain, but you will be alerted before you make any commitments if you're interested. This is valued at $395, the bonus session, that is, not the entire program. But once again, if you're interested, you will be alerted if that is still actually available. So if you're interested, I want to encourage you to go to my site, venturewalk.com/action circle, and you can absolutely enter your info, and you will get all of the details on the program, from the pricing to the commitment to all of those pieces in between. And I really want to invite you to do that. So I've got one more section left, and I see some of these awesome chats coming through. So I'm so glad to hear and to see some of the cool questions and the cool ways that you guys are already recognizing about the positioning. So glad to hear this. Oh, awesome. Diversity. You guys are saying that it'll allow you to reach more of your target audience. So glad you're here. Christy, so glad you're here. I am so happy to hear that you're really talking and thinking about positioning. The pet care industry is one where it is very challenging to really identify where you're wanting and needing to be positioned, because people really believe that one person in that industry is like another. And I certainly put the pet industry and the child care industry and home health care often in the same bucket. This is a big piece to give attention to, so I'm glad you've let me know. So glad you guys are chiming in and letting me know just how this information is helping you. So the final piece, and I know that this is probably the piece that most of you were most interested in, is around pricing. And, man, pricing is one of those really convoluted areas that, honest to goodness, if you don't figure this out, it can burn you in a big, big way. And it doesn't matter, again, if you're a service-based business or retail. The truth is you've got to figure pricing out if you're going to have a business that's going to sustain you. Marketing says that you should always offer a sale or a discount, right? We've all heard this. The big deal is we've got to close and we've just got to get them to do it. I agree to that on some level, but model says that you want to create an easy intro and always tie the pricing to the pain, to the pleasure, or to some promise. So let me kind of explain this a little bit. You want, indeed, to give every person that is coming to you, and let me say, when I say every person, I mean every person that is your ideal customer or client, you want to give them an easy way to say yes. So most of the time, ladies and gentlemen, that does mean having some type of option, an introductory option that gets people literally into some level of commitment with you. For many of you and most of you, to be honest, it is going to be a lower priced item, or perhaps it's a shorter amount of time where there is less value that's associated with that. The big point here is that it should be an introduction. In other words, the mistake I see business owners make when they use this type of strategy is they'll keep them or keep their customers on this lower pricing forever, and that's not the idea. It's very important that the communication be made up front, that this is an introduction, and it is what you are clearly using to get them to say yes. But at the point the customer is really happy and is excited, and you, as I mentioned, have already communicated that this is the flow and how things would go, you can now turn them on to the regular type of pricing, which once again may still be a special agreement, but it's no longer just the intro. That's the lower base. This is the key point. When we think about pricing, ladies and gentlemen, there are more than a few strategies that exist. Which one you use always depends. It depends on three key things that I know most of us do not recognize or take into consideration. Most of us are only thinking of competition. We're like, what else is everyone else actually charging? I'm going to charge a little lower at the beginning and maybe a little more at the end. That's only partially true. You've also got to consider your consumer and consider what they are really seeing as value. The truth is, it's not just about what they are willing to pay, but it is literally how it is that they perceive you in comparison to all the other options. And remember, I told you earlier, the options are not just your competition. Sometimes the option is on some level what they're not going to do. The third piece to keep in mind naturally is the cost. And for retailers, I see the most issue in this arena because they most often will identify their pricing based off of some margin or some magic number above cost. But here's what I want you to recognize. Cost is not just what you paid, such as the wholesale price or even your hourly rate. The cost has to also include how much it is for you to deliver in the way that you do. So in other words, ladies and gentlemen, your pricing must always include value. And although you may want to be the very high-end kind of person, you've got to pause and say, who is it that I am selling to? Because if who you're selling to does not suggest that whole ability and interest in paying higher prices, then you've got a couple choices. You've got to adjust your pricing or you've got to position yourself to go after a completely different segment. And this is the piece where I see so many people leave off with pricing. They will look at one of these three circles, but they won't consider all of them in a coordinated effort. And so they'll kind of shoot themselves in the foot kind of to save a toe, if that makes any sense at all. The big deal here is that pricing is an interesting animal, but at the point you understand you must consider all parts of these circles, it really helps you to understand just where it is you should fall. And as I mentioned earlier, in my business GPS action circle, I'll be really delving into all of the strategies for pricing and helping businesses to really recognize which they should be using in identifying that next level opportunity. I realize that this is one of those pieces that honestly can last for a very long time, just developing pricing. And at the end of the day, it's always a test. But I know that you know, as I do, even in testing things, you want to have some really clear, accurate assumptions. And that's really what people will be charged with once we get into that program. I'm hoping and trusting that what I've shared with you this evening has been helpful. I, as usual, am certainly not out of information, but I am out of time. My commitment was to keep to 45 minutes of webinar time, but as I mentioned, I'm actually going to hang out on my Facebook page until 7 p.m., so if you have other questions, that is where I will be. Of course, if you also have any questions while we're here on the webinar, I encourage you to shoot them through the chat, and I'm happy to open those up. Right now, I'm just going to do a quick wrap-up of what I talked about and also just give you that information again. So if you're ready and interested in learning more about my Business GPS Action Circle, you'll have the information to do so. So we've gone through kind of this little tete-a-tete, right? You know, marketing versus modeling, and I think by now you do know that the winner is the business model, right? The big deal here, ladies and gentlemen, is that building a solid business model beats marketing every time. And the 3 Ps that we reviewed tonight specifically are packaging, which is really understanding just how it is that you are presenting your product or service. We talked about not having a lot of options, but at the same time sometimes combining specific options to make it that much more attractive. We also talked about positioning, and positioning is so much bigger than just being unique and different. It's about being unique and different, not compared just to your competitors, but anything or anyone that someone may consider to solve the problem that they have. The big watch out here is making sure that you don't fall into the Me Too branding and really being concerned about what it is that or who it is that you're selling to. I have to say here, I've found it most challenging for businesses in the whole positioning arena that are really tied to their community and cause-minded types of businesses, because often when it comes to better customers, they're always wondering, well, what does better really mean? And for you, better is going to be defined by whatever is important to your mission and your model. Often we think about business, and obviously the business is meant to make money, but we cannot just think of the money goals and not think of the mission goals. And so when it comes to positioning, you must consider both. And finally, we talked about pricing. I talked about there are several types of strategies around here, and you want to certainly be aware of what to use when. But just in thinking through the three main pieces to consider, it's not just what your competitors are charging, it's not just what the consumer is willing to pay, and it's not just how much it costs you to either produce or to deliver. It is some hybrid of all three. And at the end of the day, in identifying what your pricing should be, it is part test, but you always want an intro, an easy way for customers and clients to say yes. The big deal, though, ladies and gentlemen, is that you don't stay there and you allow the customer and client to really communicate with you around what is valuable so they can understand that's an intro pricing, and then they're going to move beyond that to get the full-blown pricing or whatever you decide that is. So, again, I've really enjoyed all of you being on the webinar and hanging out with me tonight on a Thursday evening of all times and places. As I mentioned, if you are interested in my Business GPS Action Circle, where we'll be delving into the three Ps I talked about tonight, as well as the other three that are integrated into the idea of modeling, as well as literally developing the campaign around your best next-level growth opportunity, I invite you to certainly go to venturewalk.com/action circle and really just give me your information. There's a very basic form there, and we'll get back to you and give you the basics of what the program is and what it involves. It officially kicks off on March 22nd with an in-person here in New Orleans, Louisiana. And again, if you go to that website, if you're interested and think this program may be for you, we'll get you all the information. And again, there's no obligation, just to express interest. So I'm going to be on Facebook, facebook.com/venturewalk, fielding questions, chatting it up. And if you want to hop over there and like the page and chat with me, I hope to hear and see you there. Until then, ladies and gentlemen, have a good evening and a great business model. Take care.